Welcome to the Radical Lifestyle Podcast, brought to you by Generation to Generation, where you will be inspired by the past, equipped for the present, and prepared for the future as we engage in conversations with people from around the world. Hello everyone, this is Andrew and Daphne from Generation to Generation, and our guest today is Israel Subira. Israel, for people that don't know who you are, can you just say a bit about where you're from and what you do?
Okay, so I'm from Brazil, and I was raised in a Christian home, which is a privilege. And I had parents that really discipled me into loving the Lord and really led by example. And I've been preaching the gospel. I studied theology. My dream is to one day become a pastor, which I've been doing by heart. But I'm really passionate about working with young adults and teenagers, and it's been sort of the focus of our online ministry as well. I've got a YouTube channel that I started in 2015 with the idea of doing like short messages and series and teaching on scripture, and really not only to bring forward biblical themes, but to bring people into fascination with the amazing book that the Bible is and just how extraordinary. And that's the simple version. The truth is, I'll do anything that I can to spread the seeds of the kingdom. I've been making music, I've been preaching, and I'll dance if I have to, which is not something you guys want to see. But I have my heart set on trying to do my best to be obedient to the Great Commission of Jesus and inspiring others to do the same.
And then for people that listen to this that want to find out more about you, maybe see some of this stuff that you're putting out there, where can they do that?
Yeah, so I've got the YouTube channel, which is my name, Israel Subira. Everything in there is in Portuguese. I've been working mainly with Brazilians, but it is a dream that I have to do everything that I do in Portuguese. I hope to do it in English someday. We haven't gotten to that structure yet, but we'll get there someday. But so far, if you speak Portuguese, or if you don't care that you don't speak Portuguese and you want to see what we're doing anyways, you can find me on YouTube with, my name, Israel Subira, which is Subira. Instagram is the same, and Spotify is the same. Those are the main three ones.
Okay, and I'll put those links in the description so they're ready for people to go and check out. And, we don't speak Portuguese. We understand some Portuguese, but sometimes it just sounds really nice to be able to listen to the other language. And I think some worship songs, for example, sound better in Portuguese than they do in English, even though I don't understand what's being said. So maybe you're one of those people, and if you are, then I encourage you to go check out these links.
So Israel, you went through a lot of different things, and we could pick up any of those and run with them, especially the dancing one. We'll come to that in a bit, okay? So. But let's go back again. Tell us a bit about your upbringing. You said you were brought up in a Christian family and your parents discipled you. What did that look like?
Okay, so when I was born, both my parents were already pastors. So my sister and I were PKs, and it was actually amazing. It was always fun and an amazing experience to be a pastor's kid. And I really fell in love as I saw my parents working in the kingdom. I fell in love with that. And I know there are many ways, and people have many callings. There are multiple ways that you can minister to God and men, but the idea to equip people to minister to God and men from everywhere is my absolutely, favorite. I just love that church setting and going after people. But my parents were definitely leaders by example. I don't recall ever in my life seeing my parents not excited to go to church, even if we were just participating in something. And I remember in multiple occasions just walking into their room and, to find my mom just reading the Bible and crying. I remember as a little kid, I'd ask like, "Mom, are you all right?" And she'd be like, "Oh, I'm, so good." God is just speaking to mom, and, things like that. I remember, I think also one of the strongest things I remember, every now and then my dad would come and he would do that dad thing and say, "Israel, you can't do this because this is what the Bible says." But that wasn't the only thing he did. I remember on multiple occasions he came to me and said, "Israel, I am sorry I did this because the Bible says I cannot do this. I shouldn't have talked to you this way." And just that, I think since I was a little kid, just brought this, it made it so real that God was the one who ruled our home. And it wasn't something my parents were trying to do, to make us behave. It really, their love for Jesus and their dedication for Jesus really marked me from a young age. That and my parents really getting me to read the Bible as soon as I could read. When I was 6 years old, I remember my dad came and he gave me a grown-up's Bible and said, "Hey, you don't need those illustrations anymore. You've memorized them. So how about you read a big boy's Bible now?" And I was excited. And he told me that if I read 4 chapters every day, I would read the Bible in less than a year, because the Bible has 1,189 chapters. And I did that when I was 6 years old. I read the Bible for the first time in less than a year. I got so excited. I did it again. I decided to go to 7 so I could read the Bible twice. And I decided to go to 14 so I could read the Bible 4 times in a year. And I just kept falling in love with the Bible. I lost count. I remember that by 12, I had read the Bible 12 times, and I was so excited because it was one for each year. And that book just captivates me so much. I remember when I was in high school and, having to decide what I was going to do to make my parents proud. I applied to this, difficult law school in my city, and I passed in 4th, just to dump it to go do theology, which is, what puzzled my mind. And, if God called you to be a lawyer or work with the law, that's great. But I was so sure that my calling was to study the Bible, because I couldn't, I just became obsessed with it, with the Word of God, with how, different people from different times and different languages all wrote in different literary styles the same unified narrative. And it just blows my mind. It's a godly book. And I really, I'm just so thankful for my parents who introduced that book to me. But I don't know if I'm going too long here, but basically,
no, go on.
My parents' example made me love the Bible.
Yeah, one of the things I pick up, I think we have lost the great adventure of following Jesus. We've lost the excitement of following him. We've lost the wonder of like the Bible. And when you speak, you bring out all of those. I mean, I was talking to some people only yesterday and say, where's the adventure of following Jesus gone? I mean, this is the greatest adventure you could ever have. Why do you think this has got lost?
I'm not really sure why we get so used to the gospel. These are the best news ever. And I once heard this quote, like, how is it possible that us, such boring creatures, get so bored with God, who is such a fascinating creator? Meanwhile, God, the fascinating creator, is so fascinated by us, such boring creatures. That just spoke to me a lot. I think it was back at IHOP. Someone just shared that. And, one of the things that makes me the most upset is to see, teenagers, young adults, or even adults, anyone, going to the movies, which, I have nothing against. I love superhero movies, explosions and all of that in the movies, right? And people come back and they're just in awe. Like, did you see that alien? Did you see the language it spoke? That was so creative and fantastic. And we're so marveled by all of these simple things. And it breaks my heart to see teenagers at church, when you ask them to open their Bibles in Colossians, and they're like, oh yeah, Colossians, they're used to it. And we've got this bomb in our hands. It's just, I don't know. I think we lose touch, Daphne. I think we don't contemplate and behold enough. We don't get into the book enough sometimes, just, by being used to it. Because if you really think about what you're reading about, there's no way your heart, is not going to be captivated by that. There's no way, like, your mind's not going to be blown. Like, even right now, as we record this podcast, it blows my mind to even think a little bit about the great white throne room. Like, right now, there's a room in heaven with God's physical presence, sitting on a throne. And around that throne, there are 24 more thrones, which, we've got all these different ideas, but we have no idea who these elders are. And we've got these 4 living creatures that sound so scary. If you think about it, it doesn't look like the pretty, clean heaven picture you see in your children's book. It's It's scary. One has the face that's similar to an ox, the other one of an eagle, a lion, a man, and they have 6 wings each, and they have their bodies full of eyes, and they're just gazing upon the Lord and singing. And we see in the Bible, passages that are 700 years apart, and prophets mention these angels singing the same song. And it just, makes you think about home. That is home to us, this fascinating place. If you just, you just give into it a little bit, there's no way you're not going to be fascinated by it. And I think it's just really giving yourself to the book and thinking about it. I think cultivating passion comes with how you invest your time and your affection, really. And I think if you just read the Bible as a task, you might be miserable, but if you do it to seek the one behind it, I think you're going to be passionate. There's a big difference there. But
before you say what you're about to say, I've just got to appreciate a good double entendre that he threw out there a second ago. He's talking about enjoying comic book superhero things, and then he goes on to say how we marvel at these movies that we see. As we marvel at what we see, but Marvel, the comic books, things. Anyway,
I'm glad you caught that.
Yeah, that was a
I'm
good
glad
one.
you caught that depth from that.
But I see.
That's my takeaway of what you just said.
But definitely, I'm glad you bring this up, because personally, I do believe that my calling is a lot. It's really related to having people look up. That's it. If sometimes with the message, with one of the videos that I make, it can simply get people to look up and really ponder and think about heaven, I feel so glad, because I think that's what marked my teenage years. I started to get, in touch with some teachings from IHOP. I went to their Fascinate conference, and it wasn't just a biblical truth, that to some extent I already knew, but it was the fascination in so many of those preachers talking about passages that I had read 100 times, but never seen that way, that really lit my heart on fire. So, the other day I was running. I just ran. I run with my dog. He's a big husky, and it's not so common to see, like a Kansas quarter timber wolf husky running around. So Brazilians typically, whoa, like that dog's beautiful, and they want to pat him. And I just ran by this group of teenagers. They're like, whoa, that dog is that. And they're talking about my dog. So I just turn around. I'm like, have you guys heard about the good news? And they're like so freaked out, like, wait, what good news? I'm like, the good news. And we started talking, and I'm just preaching to these group of teenagers, as out of the box as I can, but as simple as I can, just really purely scripture. And I can't forget the look in their eyes. They were none of them were following the Lord. Some of them had followed the Lord in the past, but that day, all of their hearts were just so captivated by that, simple talk about the man that Jesus is, the friend that Jesus is. I was talking to them and asking, like, did you know that the first thing that Jesus did after defeating death and hell was pranking his friends? And we're like, what? That's Jesus, the savior of mankind, who wants to prank his friends? And just simple conversations like that. And all 4 of them are now open to visit our church, and I'm getting them connected to life groups just because of a talk in the street like that. So if you hear a teacher, there's always those 2 teachers. There's always a teacher that's passionate about what he teaches. And even if you don't like the subject, I remember I had a history teacher that was just amazing. And so far, I don't know if I love history because I had him as a teacher, if I already liked it before, but he was just amazing. And even the people in our class that didn't enjoy history loved the class because he was so passionate about what he was teaching. And now every now and then you come across that teacher that regrets picking that career as a teacher. And it's just a struggle to stay awake. And I don't know how we expect to be, because we're not just called to bear witness to Christ. We're called to be his witnesses. I don't think how we would expect to do that if we're not passionate about it. That speaks louder than what you're sharing. I think is also what you're sharing, how you're sharing. I mean, anyways.
Yeah. Often for people that grow up within ministry, they either walk away, go do their own thing. They get caught up in the rituals of what those things are. It becomes mundane. There's a loss of the sense of adventure when you become so familiar with the inner workings of how ministry maybe works. What was it about how you were raised, do you think, that helped you to keep that sense of adventure and for you to want to continue in ministry in your own terms going forward?
I remember as a kid, my parents went to church a lot. There were always conferences, there were always meetings in the middle of the week. And when I was little, I was basically dragged to a lot of those. I went where my parents were going. But as I got older and I had more, autonomy, and I was making choices, I remember they still invited us. And I remember this one day, I came back home from school. I was tired. My parents were going to church. I'd already been to church like 3 or 4 times that week. And they were having this conference. I remembered I told my dad I wanted to stay, and he said that was fine. And I just turned on my video game and I sat back on the couch and I was ready to relax. And I remembered my dad opened the door and he said, "Are you sure you don't want to come?" I said, "Dad, I really don't. I'm really tired." And I remember he stopped for a minute and said, "Why don't you come? It's going to be great. God might speak to you again in a different way. We're going to worship God as a family." And he said this, "Tomorrow's Saturday. You can come back and play video games as late as you want. You can enjoy that later and still rest. But I think it'd be great if you come." And that, for some reason, that memory just marked me, because he wasn't speaking as someone like, "Oh, it's neat for you to be there." He was excited about going there. He had been there more times than I did. It's something about how enthusiastic it was about making that invitation, a day in which it was fine for me not to go. For some reason, that memory just marked me. And I think being, in all of these places all of the time, as a PK, sometimes listening to the same message for the 32nd time. And I think I was just shocked with how often God would still speak to me in things that I thought I was used to. And I think if you have an open heart, really, because having an open heart is not something that happens passively. You really have to decide. A good way, I think, for us to just self-evaluate ourselves, I don't know if that's redundant, but just to do that self-evaluation is go to visit the children's ministry and hear the story of Jesus, how they tell it to the kids. If it doesn't want to make you cry, then you might be getting used to a powerful message. In its simple form, if it doesn't mess you up, then you might not be getting into it, in the real way. Because if you really think about it, it's just, I'm glad to be alive, that I get to know God and be with him forever, and to be a part of his, this narrative of redemption. And it's just this beautiful plan, this beautiful God. And I think, I don't know exactly why we do get so caught up. I know that every now and then I just find myself, being tired, weary, sometimes traveling a lot. And I pray this prayer, Jesus, just help me see you. Because if we do that, then there's no way around being completely passionate about Jesus. If we just catch that glimpse really of who he is, what he's up to. And yeah, I don't know if that answers your question. I'm sorry. I'm passionate about this, but I think, Jesus said that, the kingdom belongs to the kids. And I think sometimes we need a childlike approach. Sometimes we mistake spiritual maturity for commodity, and we hear these simple messages, simple sermons, and we think we're past that. No, I already learned this. I'm at this different level. And I think sometimes that's not maturity as we think it is. I think that's commodity, and we don't want to, I don't know. I think sometimes we're not just humble to receive the kingdom as kids.
I think too, sometimes people have forgotten how to deliver the kingdom to us as children. Now, one of my statements is, doesn't matter how clever you are, if you cannot speak so even a child can understand, you're not clever enough. We got to get this. I think one of the things that really comes across when I'm listening to you, well, first of all, is passion. Passion is catching, and that is huge. But you have caught the eternal story. So often people are focused on, well, it's there and you serve him, and when you die, you will go to like that's just the terminal. Whereas it isn't. It's the start. It's the start of another great adventure. And listen, you talk. It's very rare that I've talked to people where they're immediately deep dive into the eternal story. Where did you catch that from? Was it mostly from IHOP? Did you get it before?
So I always had a passion for the big picture. In school, whenever I had a new subject introduced to me, I was trying to see how that fit in the big picture, be it the story of the universe, whatever. I was always trying to find the big picture. And I think reading the Bible from cover to cover my whole life, that's my favorite way to read the Bible. Every now and then I do studies and I go to different books, but in my personal time with God in the morning, in my devotional, I really like to read the Bible from cover to cover. And it's just something that I do a lot. And I think going over that unified narrative and that unified story just made me see, the big picture, clearer and clearer. And I fell in love with the big picture. I really did. To see how everything comes together in this beautiful plan of God. And it just, and then when I approach mundane tasks, I try to see them in the big picture. There's so much value in each day that we have. And I try to keep that big picture in mind. And I think IHOP was amazing. It really was a blessing to feed that passion for the big picture. I remember my camera right now, I just moved. I'm in this new apartment and my camera is sitting right now on a book from one of the classes that we had, The Excellencies of Christ. And it's by far the favorite class I ever took in my life. We took a whole semester to go over the life of Jesus, little details. I remember this one class about meekness. And we went over that passage where the Pharisees are arguing with Jesus. And, Jesus talks about Abraham. They get upset and they tell Jesus, at least we know who our father is. We're not a Samaritan like you. And I remember Alan Hood, who was teaching that class, just like, guys, let's read into it. What is really happening here? Do you get how offensive this is? Do you get what they're really talking about Jesus and his mom? And, and I just remember sitting there and thinking, like, if it was me, redemption would have failed right there. I would have called, fire from the heavens because, don't talk about my mom. And just seeing Jesus' reaction to that one class about meekness, no one could leave. It's like 25 minutes past the time our class was over. Everyone is just weeping on the floor. And I think classes like that really, fed my passion. And I think that's the powerful thing about the truth. The Bible says that if you know the truth, it will set you free. And I like to say that the answer of, why that happens is because the truth is. It's as simple as that. Why is the truth so liberating? It's because it is. And what is exposes what isn't, and the Bible gives us the truth. So we know how life is. And because we know how it is, we know what it isn't supposed to be. And I think when you behold God, even in its simple form, but truly, it's liberating. That will light you up on fire. And I don't know, you guys are touching a subject that I would just get lost in.
No, we want to get lost with you. I was just thinking when you said you know the truth, it's like you can't tell a counterfeit until you see the authentic article. How do you know it's a counterfeit if you haven't seen that? I'm going to just press a little thing because you told a story and I said I do want you to tell this story because I think it's just priceless. You didn't sail through your childhood and teenagers and not want to opt out at any time. So tell us about the time when you approached your father and said, I think I'm done reading the Bible. Tell us what his approach is, because I think that's classic.
As I mentioned earlier, I started reading the Bible really young. So I remember this one time I thought, I already read the Bible so much, but my dad, keeps just getting on my case. Have you read the Bible today? Like, I see that you're playing games. Have you already read the Bible today? You're about to go to your friend's house, but have you already read the Bible? And I got tired of that a little bit, saying like, Dad, I don't want to read the Bible every day. And to my surprise, I just came to him, I don't know, I think I was 9 or 8. And to my surprise, he said, okay, that's fine. And I was so shocked, to the point that I asked him, like, Are you not going to tell me that I can't? Like, I was waiting for that reaction. He said, no, if you don't want to read the Bible, you don't have to read the Bible every day. And I was like, okay. And when I'm about to walk away, he said, but you cannot eat every day anymore. Not at my house. I was like, what, you're not going to let me eat because I'm not going to read the Bible every day? He said, yeah, you don't need to eat every day. I'm like, I never said I don't need to eat every day. I said, well, you did when you said you didn't want to read the Bible every day. And I remember I sat down, I was like, Dad, that's confusing. Like, what are you trying to tell me? And he said, son, you read the Bible every day because that's, you're nourishing your spirit. You're diving into the Word of God that brings you faith and intimacy with the Holy Spirit. There's a reason why you do this. And you're not just done because you read enough. He said, can you go on forever from the food you had yesterday? Are you not hungry today? I said, yeah, Dad, I'm hungry today, even though I ate yesterday. He said, that's how we are with the Bible. He told me, Israel, your prayer time, your time reading the Bible, that's the food for your spirit. And to me, that was amazing that he got that opportunity really to minister to me and disciple to me. And I left that conversation with, I think that started to change my mindset, because when I started reading the Bible, it was a task. It was a task given by my parents, but eventually it became a relationship. And it was through that revelation of why I did it. And I think that was the beginning of it, was started to end my devotional time as a task and turning it into a pleasure, really. But my parents did that so many times, and in moments that I came to him and he saw the opportunity for the lesson. And I have a daughter. She's just a year and 4 months old, and we're already teaching her about the Lord. I love that all the first things she's learning are all related to Jesus. The first question we taught her was, where does Jesus live? To which she always replies, she pokes her chest, like right here. And when we start to pray, she'll learn to bring her hands together, and she closes her eye a little bit and keep peeking, or looks around, and she waits until the prayer is done and claps her hand always. And she loves her baby Bible. And every now and then when we're reading it to her, it's when it truly gets me that it doesn't matter, like we're speaking the simple language to her, but the message of the Bible is just so powerful. And I really want to do the same thing my parents did, and I pray for the help of the Holy Spirit, really, to see those moments in discipling my kids in the future. But that's the story.
No, that is amazing. I mean, I think you heard us speak about how Eli seized the moment with Samuel in the night and didn't send him back to bed, but he sees that, and that transformed that moment, I believe, has impacted our lives today. I won't go into all that, but it is seizing the moment. So can we now, we could stay here forever. Let's just take a bit of a leap forward. Music. Talk to us about you and music.
So when I was a kid, my mom wanted me to take musical lessons, but I found them so boring, and I quit, which I regret very much today. But when I was around 12 years old, I found out about this. Uh-oh. Can you guys see me?
No.
Okay. I found about this prayer room that went on 24/7, and that people had been praying for, at the time, 18 years. I remember, wait, that's crazy. Sorry. And I found out there were teenagers there my age that just prayed hours every day. And that really made me think, when I was 12, like, man, I get to close my door and speak to God now, and he will listen, and maybe I'll listen from him. And why do I not do this often? And just really inspired by the prayer room and how they did worship constantly, I grabbed that old guitar and I kept playing the 4 chords that I knew while I just tried to spontaneously worship Jesus. I didn't know how to sing then. In fact, it was very discouraging, because when people did hear me sing, they would always make fun of me, with good reason, because it was awful. But just doing that over and over just really made me passionate about music. And from those spontaneous moments of worship, songs started to be born. And I didn't really think it was going to be a thing I'd do outside of my bedroom until this day that God gave me one song and he told me it would bless a lot of people and bring a lot of people home. A lot of people that didn't know Jesus would turn their lives to Jesus. A lot of people that, were just that weren't walking in the faith anymore would come back. And the song just had that anointing. So I remember I wrote that down, and it was, I'm trying to remember, I was 14 years old at the time. So that was, actually, I might have been 14 or 15 already. And I'm trying to remember what year was that. So it was around 2013 that I wrote that song. And, after that, I really kind of started writing more and more songs, and I didn't really think I'd be the one to sing them. Even when God told me that song would bless a lot of people, I thought maybe someone will record it someday. Never thought it'd be me. And then in 2016, God told me to go and record it. But at this time, in 2016, I hadn't even passed the audition to, be a part of worship in church. So I still didn't know how to sing very well or play very well. And, to this day, I'm still learning, but I had this command from God to go and do it. And I did. And in 2017, we released that song on YouTube, and it's insane what happened in there. Well, at the same time, there's a parallel story to it. God told us to go serve this church for free. And we offered all of the pay back to the church. Meanwhile, that song came out and paid us to work for free, for the church, because I believe with the first year that song had 50 million views, which blows my mind. Right now it has 130 something million. And everywhere I go, I meet people that tell me they came to Jesus because of that song. And it blows me away. So I've continued to do music since. I'm still learning. I'm producing an album right now. And it's my first time as really being the producer without the training wheels. And I love it. It's going to come out in February. And I'm also actually in January, I'm recording my first English song, because I've been writing songs in English this whole time, but I never released them. And I'll start releasing them. So I'm really excited. I'm actually going to get to play with my favorite artist's band, which is John Mark McMillan. And I'll be recording that song with his band. I'm really excited. And it's a very prophetic song.
Wow. We'll have to hear about the album when it comes out. You can come and talk to us a bit about some of the songs.
It turned out that music has been the way that we've been paying our bills and flexible to most of the time just serve the church as volunteers. Really, it's what we've been doing. And I love it.
Wow. Can you haven't given us a clue what that song was, what it was called.
Oh.
I mean,
okay.
Come on,
yeah,
let's get down to some details. We've had the big picture, now we're into the details. Okay?
So that song is it's a love song. It's really a question wondering how God could love me so much when I don't love him that much. It's basically it's an honest song. And, I remember just having that feeling when I wrote that song, like, how is it possible that you think about me all the time when I don't think about you all the time? And just that kind of like brutal honesty in singing. And the song goes a little bit like that. It's called Take Me Home. And when I say it in English, because in Portuguese it sounds so different. And, when I say it in English, people do think about the, Take Me Home, country roads. But it's just, the chorus of the song says, basically, Lord, take me home, because I don't belong away from you. Like I'm supposed to be with you. And the whole, the verses it's kind of a long song, but it's kind of this reflection, how can you love me knowing all that I've done, knowing what I think in my heart, knowing that I would run away if the door was open. It's just this very poetic but honest talk with God of how can you love me so much. The song, it's called Me Leva Pra Casa in Portuguese, which translates to take me home. But it's been the main song, I think, that, everywhere I go that I'm preaching, sometimes people come up with a guitar and it's like, can you please play that song? I can't stand it anymore, but I know it's a very special
I was going to ask that.
Can't stand it, but I love it.
Yeah, and the animation on it. Someone showed us the video, I think,
Yeah. Oh,
when we were in
someone
Brazil,
did.
and the
Okay.
animations were really good as well. So even if you don't speak Portuguese, you don't understand it, I still recommend go check it out. And the animations say a lot as well, just on their own.
Yeah.
So I'm going to jump you forward yet again, right? What dreams do you have that you have yet to fulfill? You said you want to be a pastor. Okay, we're on that. Any other dreams that you think I would really love to do that?
I mean, I have a lot of dreams, but most of them are connected to the big picture of me. Really, my life dream is to be a friend of Jesus. And there's so much, to it. My dream is to one day sit at that table and just really enjoy fellowship with the man. But prior to that, I'll have to listen to words, good and faithful servants, join the party. And prior to that, I have a lot of work to do. And I think we, especially people that are in ministry, we often get so caught up in like, what is it that God wants me to do? Some people have their calling and purpose crisis over it. And I do believe, each of us, we have that unique and individual calling. But with that aside, God has already made it so perfectly clear what he wants us to do. And, the other day I was listening to this guy preach. He has a real long beard, real cool guy. And he was talking about how we keep mistaking commandments with callings. We keep thinking things are optional when they're not. They're commandments from Jesus. That was you, by the way. That message really marked my life. And it really has actually shaped so much the season that I'm living right now. I kind of went all out in that. And it just kind of shook me, really. Like, so many of us live like that. I so often think like that, this is a call. This is not my calling. Like, are you kidding me? This is a commandment. And, but before that, people would ask me like, Israel, when did you find out you're preaching, preaching was your calling? And I would tell them like, it isn't just mine. Like, preaching is not a calling. It's a commandment. We're all called to preach. I just, as I did it, I found out that it was my calling to do it in this setting and in every setting that I can. I'll do it in video, I'll do it on the stage, I'll do it talking to people, but we're all called to preach. And I think, obedience is what differs Jesus's fans and Jesus's friends. Because he said in John 14:21, these are the ones that love me. John 15:18, is it? He says, these are my friends, the ones that do what I say. It's somewhere in John 15. Is that right? John 14:21? Which you better check if I'm quoting all these scriptures.
John 14 is the in my Father's house are many mansions, etc.
And then verse 21. But anyways, the idea, he said that, these are my friends, the ones that obey me. And, you can preach about Jesus's smile and how great he is and yay. But if you don't preach about his commandments, are we really wanting to be his friends? In his parable of the builders, he said, this is the man that listens to my words, but doesn't do what I say. He's building his house upon the sand with no foundation, but the person who listens to my words and obeys them is building his house upon a foundation, upon the rock, and he will not be shaken. And I think that is just powerful. Yeah, it's John 14:21. So Jesus's love language is obedience. So I think we spend. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go on, Michelle.
I think we spend so much time thinking about the things that we can do and not enough time thinking about the things we have to.
So, Israel, one of the things that really strikes me about you're talking, it's all about relationship. And the more you have a relationship with somebody, the more you want to be with them, the more you want to talk with them, the more you want to understand about them. One of the things that horrifies me, particularly, I mean, I've noticed it lately, is the way that busy has become a mandate for ministry. You say to somebody, how are you? How are things going? Oh, busy, busy. And everybody goes, good, good, good. And I think, where did busy ever enter in to the mandate of our relationship with Jesus? I'm not saying we shouldn't be busy, but when that's what comes out of our mouths, it's rather horrifying. And another thing that I say, and it's totally true, that in all the years of ministry, people said, how's this? How are you doing this? And we tell stories. No one has ever said to me, Daphne, how's your relationship with Jesus? No one at all.
Wow.
And I think what you're talking about is the heart, not of ministry, it's the heart of who we are. Have you noticed what I've just said amongst people and about that?
Yes. And it's so true that it's about really who we are, because, I don't think, even though I preach, I don't think I'm a preacher. People ask me, are you a preacher or a worship leader? And I honestly, I don't know how to answer that. I say, like, man, I'll do anything I can. Like, who I am. I'm a friend of Jesus. I'm his servant. And I'll do what he wants me to do. If Jesus told me to leave ministry and go into engineering because that was his plan for me, bye. I'll learn those numbers, which I'm terrible at. But I really think it's about that relationship and that guidance. But it's so true. I don't recall people asking me that question when I'm out and traveling. Although my father-in-law calls me like every Friday to ask me that question. Do you know that my father-in-law, we have discipleship every Friday, and his lead question is, how is your relationship with Jesus?
Wow.
And it's funny because sometimes, like, I haven't spent too much time reading the Bible this week or in prayer because I've been traveling, I'm preaching, and he'll say, like, son, but you're so wrong. Like, that's what's really important. You should be finding more time. Like, if you need to, you should wake up a little bit earlier, and he just, and the man has authority because we travel with him. I know how he prioritizes his time with the Lord. And I love that he asks me that question every week. And it's something I try to, with my friends and family, we ask that question a lot. And I think we should ask it more often. How is your relationship with Jesus?
Well,
because really,
maybe when we come back, you can be the first person to ask me ever.
Okay, I'll do that. Hopefully no one beats me to it,
Yeah, probably everyone listening to this
I
will
would
be
do it
contacting
now. Yeah, maybe I should ask you now, Daphne, how's your relationship with Jesus?
Yeah, maybe you should. We'll do that on the next podcast.
Sounds good.
One of the things that I remember, we've been friends with some of your family, extended family, for quite a few years, and our last trip to Brazil is when we really connected with you. And one of our first conversations was about your heart for the young people,
Yes.
and you were really kind of grieved at that time when we were talking. And you're still young now. I'm at the point where
I'm 23.
my back, I'm starting to get the aches in my my back, and I'm pushing on a little. My mum's still very young herself.
I'm not.
But it's not often that you talk to other young people and they are already concerned for, passionate about reaching the generation which is coming after them.
Yeah.
Where did you get that concern for the next generation from? Why is that so significant for you? Because then in our conference, I think we just kind of compounded the issue for you and saying, actually, this is a command on the life of everyone. There is no calling to reach the next generation. It just made the burden heavier for you. So where did you get that passion from?
I'm not really sure where. I mean, aside, from church and teachings like these that really spoke loud into my heart. I recall being a teenager, and we had all of these young adults and adults that were in the youth ministry of our church, and they were so dedicated and so available. And then they blessed us so much. I think even when I was a teenager, I remember thinking, I want to do that for teenagers when I'm older, because I was going through this point of having to make so many decisions that were so important to my life, and the right people were there at the right time. But I'm not really sure where it comes from. I think it was from the conference, generation to generation. But prior to that, I think it was listening to the other concerns, because you know what they say, you gotta walk with lions, right? I try to surround myself with leaders and with friends that are burning for Jesus, and with older people that have more experience than I have, and sometimes I hear their concerns, and I don't see my task as passive in this. I see as I want to do something to help. So it really makes me think about it. You were asking about my dreams, And I love everything that I have been doing. I really felt like the Lord directed me to this, which is, making videos, making music, writing books, and preaching in every context that I possibly can. And my dreams mostly involve this, like really teaching and preaching about God and his kingdom. And I've been thinking a lot and talking to a lot of friends and pastors, and we kind of came to this idea, me and a couple of people that are, connected. I don't think this is unusual. Maybe it's not even new. Maybe I'm the one who just came across it recently, but at least in Brazil, 11-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, 11 to 15, basically, they're the most unreached, generation right now. Like that age gap, we don't know how to speak their language. I don't. I'm 23, but to those kids, I'm a dinosaur. And we always had this culture of always looking to, older people when thinking they're cool. Movies in the 80s and, even earlier, like the 60s always portrayed, people in their golden age of their maturity, their 30s. And we thought that was cool, and then it got a little younger and we, think of all these young adults. I remember being a teenager, I looked to the young adults. When I was a kid, I looked at the teenagers and I thought, that's awesome. I want to be like them. They're cool. I want to be like them when they grow up. But we realize in these kids today that they think we're weird. They call us cringy, and they have all of these names, and they're starting to look more, to their own age group as this is what being cool is like. And I think that prevents, a deeper maturity from happening. And it's not, each generation that comes, I feel like we're losing a little bit of that sense of urgency and maturity, but it's just scary to see that we don't know how to speak their language that well. And I've been trying to learn a little bit more about their language and what they're into to properly communicate. To some extent, it's impossible for you to entirely, go down on their level when their level is not really supposed to be there. I think you have to bring them up a little, but we'll do what we can. Right. It's very difficult for me to imagine having to do 15-second sermons. 10 minutes was already hard to summarize all of the message into. And, I grew up with YouTube watching, videos, but they're growing up with things like Instagram and TikTok where, you've got 30-second videos. They don't even watch it till the end. They're 15 seconds into it. They skip to the next one. And I think they have this appreciation for everything, which is not really, a deep appreciation for anything. So it's like everything is cool, except you can't really get into anything. Everything is so relative, so you can't really get into a specific thing. And I don't know, it's just weird. And I really, really dream in like being able to speak their language. So, the same way that preachers and speakers lit up my heart on fire, helped lit up my heart on fire when I was a teenager. I want to see that happening. So we've been on the works of like special projects and animations and things that I think will really speak to them. I have a meeting this week about maybe doing a really cool animation, that will kind of try, the idea is really to portray, the Bible from a really, the fascinating perspective that it is. And we have all these ideas, and I hope it works. I really want to see this generation on fire for the Lord. And I think before meeting you guys, actually, I was in a really burden. Before that conference, I was really in this burden place of having, trying to have realistic eyes to it. But you guys really taught me and inspired me to have more prophetic eyes to it. Whereas I declared, like, oh man, this is the most difficult generation ever. I've been declaring the opposite, that they'll burn for Jesus like no other generation, And I'm trying to have, because it's humbling, isn't it, to see the way that Jesus viewed people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give you some. I was going to wait till we finish, but I'll say it on here, right? I'll give you my take, which take it or leave it, on reaching them. Now, I have yet to find a young person or a child that didn't want to hang around with me. Seriously, I haven't. And I was thinking as you were speaking, what is it? And I'm just going to brainstorm with you. We haven't got long before. I'm going to brainstorm and have your feedback. I don't think they want us to be like them. I think they want us to be us.
Like us. Yeah.
You know, I mean, I see people of my age, and so they think to reach the next generation, they're doing their hair all different colours and they're wearing clothes that are just ridiculous on them, in my opinion. I think they want us to be authentically us.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think also they want to know that they are accepted, loved and respected exactly as they are. I remember I make it my mission in certain places where I know certain young people are, I have my eye on them. And I was out with one and he was covered, and nothing wrong with tattoos, I'm not saying, but he was covered in it and far away from where he should be. And I say, every time I see these youngsters, say, will you take me out for a date? Not, I want to take you, will you take me out for a date? Oh, yeah. And I just looked at him, I was eating, and I said, I love being with our dates with you. And he turned to me and he said, I know you do, Daphne, and that's what makes the difference. And I thought, it's just, I don't think I can put into words what's in my heart. I think another thing is they want to be listened to, and we can't connect with them. We can't know their language if we don't step back from telling them everything we want to tell them, and not just know that what comes out of their mouth is valuable and we want to listen, we want to hear. So I'm only saying that as kind of reflecting why and how does this happen with me. And I know it's because I'm passionate about it and I don't want to put a formula. But I think for anybody who's listening, I just want to throw that into the mix to think about it. Have you got any comments on what I've just said before we close?
No, I think I definitely agree with you, and I've been learning that. I'm a little stubborn sometimes, and it's been difficult really to learn that in practice. But I think all you said is truth, and it's true, and I'm beginning to see that more. And I'm just really, I'm glad to be here. Thank you guys for inviting me and doing this. You guys inspire me so much. And you really do. And you have no idea how much I'm preaching some of the things that I've listened and learned from you everywhere. And I'm really glad that conference really was life-changing. I'm thinking about this because I still think this is really connected to that idea of really having prophetic eyes. And I just said, isn't it humbling the way that Jesus views people? You were talking about really valuing, teenagers. And that's what I've been trying to do. Just a couple of days ago, I think 3 days ago, I was with this young guy. I was a little frustrated with him. Like, dude, you shouldn't be stumbling in the same thing over and over. We're talking about this. You could be on, and I'm thinking all of these things. And I prayed, like Jesus, like, how do I approach him? And the approach was completely different than I was thinking. It wasn't confrontational. It was encouraging, talk about all of the great things that he is, even though he wasn't living like who he really is at that moment, really to call that out. And that was amazing. He didn't need a confrontation. He needed affirmation. And I'm trying to, really, go back to that question, like, Jesus, what would you say? You're like, what? Because if I have eyes like Jesus, I'm going to see people like the way Jesus did. And it's humbling the way that he viewed people, even when they were, they weren't really there, but he already saw them ahead and he called that out. And it's really the heart that I want to have towards that generation. I've really, since that conference, I stopped declaring some of the things I was declaring about them being the most challenging generation. I've been declaring the opposite. I really see with prophetic eyes, they're the most intense generation. I believe they're going to burn like no water generation. I agree with everything you said, but I think that's really good. All of those are really key in connecting with younger people. Now I'll try to put that more to practice.
I didn't mean to turn the podcast into it, but I just wanted to say that. But it's a privilege. It's a privilege to have talked to you, and I'm excited to come back, and I'm excited to see what God is going to do with this generation. So keep your passion, keep spilling it over me, because I have come off this podcast more in love with Jesus than I did when I came into it, and that's the truth.
And I know I really appreciated hearing your heart for the next generation. As a young person yourself, a concern already was developing in you for the generation coming after. And I really appreciate that, and your want to be able to have the right communication and heart attitude towards them. And as people have heard you now, really starting to want to continue to wrestle with those issues. And it was really cool, not just for me, but also for Mum, when we'd finished the conference, we'd all gone our own different ways. And then I saw you post the story on Instagram with this quote. And I said to someone, wait, what is this saying? And I think they read it to me or something, I don't know. And it was the...
Didn't I tag you in it? I think the conference posted, the conference that I was speaking posted like as if it was my quote, and then I think I tagged you and said, hey, look what I stole from you.
That's right. Yeah. And it was really cool for us to see, that's our heart is, hey, look, we just say these things, take it, share it. And so it was really cool to see you taking these pieces of the message, make it your own, and take it out there. So it was a blessing to us to see. Israel, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're crazy busy. I know you're about to run out the door to go and speak at another conference. So have a great time. And thanks again. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If it inspired you, please rate us and subscribe on Apple or Google Podcasts, Spotify, or another podcast platform.